What decision did you think was small at the time but completely changed your life later? Story 1. I decided to take a different route to work. On this different route, I wrecked my motorcycle and shattered my leg, which is now held together by rods and screws. The long-term issues with my leg caused me to need a career change away from construction. I went back to school for engineering, which opened up the doors to a much more rewarding and as lucrative career. And while in school, I met the woman that would become my wife, all because I took a different route to work. Answer: I was dating a girl. We went to church together, and there was a guy attending who had shattered his lower leg, and they were trying to get the bones to knit together with an external frame and electric stimulation. It didn't work, and he lost his foot. I knew all the technologies available that could have made him a custom bone implant and saved his leg, but at the time, no companies were putting all the pieces together. Several years later, that experience motivated me to go back to school in biomedical engineering and do some really neat stuff. Story 2. I was unemployed in Edinburgh in 1991. On my way back from signing on, and a friend from my previous job pulled up and asked if I'd like to come to the pub because one of the other guys who used to work with us was in town looking for advice on making a tabletop ARP. I tagged along and enjoyed the chat and beers with everyone returning to their respective towns. I got a phone call a week or so later to ask if I'd like to help do the book layout for the game. Long story short, it turned out we were quite good at writing and producing games, and our first RPG got us bought up by a new company that needed a UK office to sell their new card game into Europe. We became Wizards of the Coast UK and sold Magic: The Gathering everywhere we could. This set us all up in careers we're still related to, and we just sent the latest book of that same RPG to the printers. One chance meeting got the core talent into the same room, and we never looked back. So, if an old friend you've not seen for a while asks if you'd like to go to the pub, the answer is yes. Story 3. It is childish, but a single fart changed my life. In 2013, I was working in the lobby of a downtown bank. Things were slow, and I was trying to tidy up the lobby. I had to pass gas, so I stepped outside the building. I was standing on the sidewalk and made sure no one was around. I released the fart, and it was loud, lol. I laughed out loud and then heard a woman laughing behind me. I turned around in horror, and there was a woman who had just come around the corner and was walking. I was so embarrassed. So I apologized to her, and she told me to stop saying sorry because she thought it was funny. I had never met a woman like that. Well, she stopped to talk for a few minutes, and I found out she worked at a corporate building a couple of blocks over. We agreed to meet at a downtown bar after work. 3 years later, I married her. If I had not stepped outside to fart at that exact moment, she was walking by then, I may never have met her. Answer: reminds me of how I met my wife. No flatulent humor for us, but I was very bored one night, was scrolling through AAM contacts, came across the screen name of my sister's old friend I hadn't spoken to in a decade, and looked her up on Facebook. Intrigued, I came up with an excuse to message her out of the blue and said, "Hey, do you still have the rest of that 6-pack of beer but it left at your place?" "Ooh, whoops, wrong person, LMAO. So anyway, how you been?" Long story short, we got married a decade ago and had 2 kids since then. Story 4. When I was 14, my mom took me to a history show, and the had door prizes, I won 2 tickets to go on the Kalmar Nickel, a tall ship in Delaware. While on the boat, I fell in love with it, and then found out I could sign up to be a volunteer crew member. I eventually followed the first mate out to the West Coast to work on boats. Then while out here going from boat to boat and working my way up the command to becoming a captain, I then met my now wife, who was a deckhand at the time, and now we have a family together. Answer: I worked with a guy, hi Tom, who was crew on the Star of India in San Diego Harbor in the early 90s. I was taking sailing lessons on a 27 Catalina at the time, and thought that crewing on one of those huge old sailing ships would be so cool, and probably asked Tom way too many questions about what it was like climbing the masts and all of that awesomeness. I'm sure he indulged my curiosity with amusement while we were simultaneously working in our muscle physiology lab, but still, I think of him every time I walk past the San Diego Maritime Museum and the Star of India, still there in the harbor. Later, while on my Phil's Catalina 36, we watched the mock battles with the Master and Commander replicas in the harbor. It was super fun and felt like watching a part of history. It's so cool that your mom's decision to take you to that show led to you working on the Kalmar Nickel and on to becoming a captain. And what a love story, meeting your wife. I did not end up marrying Tom, alas, but I did marry the guy I took those Catalina sailing lessons with. Age is 30 years now and counting. I think the sea binds us all together. Story 5. Applying to a front desk job at a healthcare practice for 1.50 more than my current crappy desk job. I had no healthcare experience and relied on my customer service experience to get the job. I literally started in the mailroom. I switched roles at that company, gained more actual healthcare experience. A few jobs later, and I am a clinical informatics manager making great money at my current job. So, take the risk into industries you might not have any skills in. On the job, training is still viable. Answer: your story sounds kind of familiar. I started volunteering as a young 20-something in a retirement home because I couldn't find work in my field and wanted to do something more positive than just drinking heavily and working at Tim Hortons. A couple decades later, and I have a decently rich work history in several areas of healthcare, a meaningful career, and a sober streak, longer than I ever would have thought was possible. Story 6. A random girl I'd met earlier that year at work sent me a form from a Japanese reality TV show. We had been speaking about dreaming of going to Japan, so she said, "Lowell, you should apply." I did, with zero expectations. I got picked. They flew me to Japan, all expenses paid. I ended up on TV like actual TV air around 4 times over the past 10 years. I became close friends with an elderly couple from the Japanese countryside. I ended up living in Japan for a year and a half and almost married a Japanese dude. Thank God the pandemic hit and I had to put my plans on hold. Long story short, there were too many cultural differences and my partner was an alcoholic with jealousy problems. So we broke up. I was not meant to live there. 6 years after that, I'm very happy in another country with my current partner. Life's crazy. I got plenty of stories like this. 8K, why? But I'm a freaking magnet for weird shit. Story 7. My old manager reneged on my leave request 6 months out, already approved earlier as I was taking a year's leave without pay to travel. In spite, my colleague and I searched a job site online. I applied for a job in Antarctica, interviewed, accepted the position, and resigned literally with the minimum of notice from the job with male body part manager. Went on to spend 13 months in Antarctica, traveled the world, still do, and have changed to a career with much more money and experience and passion to live life. Living my best life now. Story 8. Looking for a job within my field of what I studied, walked by an office for temporary work. My girlfriend, now wife, says I should go in. Maybe they have something. They didn't really have something, only some logistics stuff, not at all in my field of work, and was only for a few days. Took it anyway just to earn some cash. 16 years later, still working there and part of management. Story 9. When I was 18 in my second semester of college, my roommate came home saying she found me a cat at a pet store while on a date with her boyfriend. She was half joking, but I went for the heck of it. I found my best friend that day. It turns out that out of all the cats there, he was the one she had been talking about. He passed a few years ago at the old age of 16, but that was the sweetest, smartest cat I ever had. He was with me throughout my 20s and was always there with a purr and a snuggle when I needed him. Bob, you are so missed. Answer: I love this story so much, I made a very spontaneous decision to stop at a pet store and get a cat. He clawed through the cardboard box they put him in, unsure why they didn't explain to a new pet owner that I might want a carrier, and jumped onto my neck as I was driving down the highway. He scratched the shoot out of me, and I had immediate regret. Turn out I met the first love of my life, and even thought he could be a pissy boy sometimes. I have the scratches to prove it. He was also the sweetest and most loving guy. Years later, I met my husband, and they instantly connected. But the only person he never ever hurt, no matter how rough she was with him, was my daughter. After 14 very short years together, we had to say goodbye to him when she was 2. It was one of the worst days of my life, and years later, I still can't allow myself to cry too much because the grief feels suffocating. My kids still talk about him all the time. On a sentimental note, I'm Hindu, and we believe in reincarnation, and that someone we truly love will find a way to come back to us. On the 1-year anniversary of his passing, I went into labor with my son. He was born early the following day. Story 10. I was adopting a puppy, and I couldn't decide between this cute little terrier and a cute little beagle. I was moments away from the terrier when the beagle nudged my hand. She became my absolute soul dog, and I still miss her 16 years after she passed. Her name was Scout. See my username. Answer: my first dog was a beagle, and she was my everything. She was an absolute mess because beagle. I grew up in rural Oklahoma, and we never got her spayed. I grew up with litters of puppies around all the time. In hindsight, it's kind of horrifying, but as a kid, I loved it. When my now husband and I were on a road trip, we came across another beagle who'd been dumped at a rest stop. She was in bad shape. She'd obviously been a puppy mill mama and had one boob that dragged on the ground. We brought her home, got her a nip tuck, and patted ourselves on the back for getting a full beagle for basically free. I'm not someone who buys dogs, and I love mutts. Fue. A week later, she got under the house, and we had to crawl in there to get her out. We don't know why, but she had a reaction to something down there. Anaphylactic shock. Nearly died. 5K later, she recovered. We had Dorothy for 7 more years, and most of her time was spent thinking of ways to eat poisonous things. She was a world-class snuggler. She smelled bad, regardless of the number of baths we gave her. She once found a stash of dog bones, made a pile of them, and napped on them like they were a nest. I have so many stories. She died in 2018, and I still miss her so much. Always go for the beagle. You'll forever regret it in the best ways. Story 11. Snuck an issue of Cosmo into high school journalism class. There was an article titled Trendy at Vandy. It never even heard of Vanderbilt, and my friends informed me I was the least trendy person they knew. So I filled out a common app that day and applied on a whim. Got in, met my husband there, made amazing friends, even developed a sense of style. Story 12. I, male, offered to be in the delivery room to support a friend about to go through motherhood on her own. I saw it as strictly supporting a platonic friend at a vulnerable moment. I never saw that I would be the father figure in that child's now adult life, and that would become the most important thing I ever did. Story 13. Don't know when or how I started, but at the peak of my chaos, I thought to myself, if the world was against me, why would I add to the pile and be miserable? So decided to just be kinder to myself. And from there, kind of relearned to love and respect myself, give myself enough leeway and space to never justify wasting time when I shouldn't, take time to feel things rather than run away from them. Little by little, I'm reclaiming my place in the world. I'm not sure how long or how far this will take me, but so far, it's been going great. And even if things go sideways, I have enough belief in myself now to not fall too far. Story 14. In 2015, I was in something of a rough patch. About 6 to 8 months out from getting dumped from a long-term relationship with who I'd thought was the one, struggling at a dead-end job that paid basically nothing. My truck had just broken down, and I was barely getting by because I was renting rooms in my house out to friends, not close friends, but people I'd been friendly with at previous jobs. One night, one of my roommates had people over when I got home from work, and a couple of them were people I actually knew. And we all realized that we were friends of friends with each other. They were pre-gaming and about to head out and invited me to tag along. It had a rough day, had to work early, was dead broke, and they were going to a country bar. I dislike country and bars in general. They fed me a few beers and convinced me. While there, I realized all these guys had girlfriends or wives, but were all talking about meeting or hooking up with girls while there, and I was just really sort of disgusted. So as soon as we got there, I just kind of separated from them and went to the bar. Interesting thing was Guinness was like 2. So that was already a win. Anyways, I had a few girls come up to talk to me, and I was sort of talking with them. And these guys would almost always come up to sort of steal them away, which I found gross, but was generally depressed, so didn't really care about. At some point, a girl with a massive and fully displayed chest kind of pulled me onto the dance floor and started dancing with me. I'm not a dancer, especially country. I can't imagine how terrible I was, especially after having been drinking. Next thing I know, I'm surrounded by girls dancing, and they are all sort of teaching me the different dances, and we are having a good time. Suddenly, all of them disappear except one, who pulls me off the dance floor to catch our breath and talk. We had some chit-chat, exchanged numbers, and called it an evening. We've been together for 10 years and married 5. I later found out that the whole thing was a trap from the moment I walked into the bar. She says she saw me walking in and told her friends that they needed to help her get me away from my friends so she could talk to me. So they naturally assumed the chesty one would get my attention. I'm not a chess guy, but whatever, and get me on the floor where they would all surround me so that no other girls could approach or dance with me. Then, once I was comfortable, they would all disappear to give us time to chat. I've always been simultaneously flattered, but terrified at how well it worked. Story 15. I was working retail as a manager and loved it. I had a repeat customer who would always come in and talk to me. One day he offered me a ride-along for a job and mentioned that he was trying to recruit me. I assumed it was just some larger retail company based on how this guy dressed. No, I just followed him in my car, in case anyone is wondering. We meet up at a Best Buy, and I find out he's a senior product manager at Microsoft, promoting and marketing the Xbox gaming console. I was impressed as a gamer, but confused as to why he approached me. We went to several stores that day, and I loved his job and how people kept stopping us when they saw his Xbox shirt. At At the end of the day, he offered me the job, said that he felt my retail experience would help, along with all the projects I had completed. He was recently promoted and was looking for a replacement. Fast forward to today as I sit as a CIO. He helped me get into tech, and I realized how much I loved it over retail. Glad I met him or I wouldn't have gotten into tech. Story 16. I made a spreadsheet at work when I was working as a courier driver to help out a coworker. Mentioned it offhand to a manager. Got me promoted twice. Launched me from a courier driver to an IT associate. 7 years later, I'm considered a subject matter expert in our niche little corner of my industry. I've spoken at conferences, and folks from all over the country reach out to ask me about things. No idea where I'd be if I didn't make that little Excel sheet back in 2018. Story 17. I got rejected to every PhD program I applied to. I was very disheartened and about to give up. Called my brother and was like, there's one more, but the deadline is today. He said, fudge it, just apply. So I did. They were the only program that accepted me and gave me a chance. Now, 5 years later, I have my PhD and a life plan that's finally on track. Story 18. I quit a job with no plan that I dislike. I pulled in for my Thanksgiving day shift in 3 and legitimately quit. That was a horrible idea, but turned into the best decision of my life. I then got hired out of pure luck by an accounting firm as the office secretary. I had no office job experience. Well, I just hit 2 years here, and after the first of the year, will move into my own office as a full-time accountant. Also start university next month for accounting in hopes of getting a CPA license in a couple years. Story 19. Fudge it, come get me. I had left my abusive ex while he was in jail for a few months and was seeing a new guy. I was super into him, but I had convinced myself to go back to my ex because I genuinely thought I didn't have a choice. He'd never leave me alone. He'd abandon the kids. He'd make the loves of me and everyone around me miserable. I was really tipsy, and the guy I was seeing said on the phone, fudge him. I'll love your kids. We'll deal with it. It was a drunken, impulsive decision, and I genuinely would not have made it if I had been sober and thought it through. So I said, fudge it, come get me. I was right about those things. My ex saw the kids one more time after that, and never again. He stalked my house and harassed my family and friends. But that was 15 years ago, and I'm married to the new guy, and we genuinely have a life that I love. It's fun. It's easy. I am so grateful I was tipsy that day, although booze did become a problem, and I wound up having to go to rehab twice, but that's a whole other story, lol. Story 20. When I was 10, I did 20 push-ups for the first time in my life for a gym test, after struggling for almost my entire time in elementary school. After that accomplishment, I wanted to always be able to do 20 push-ups, no matter how old I got. It helped start me on a path towards maintaining my strength and building my fitness. Fast forward 30 years later, I'm still able to do at least 20 push-ups and so much more. Story 21. In 2012, I was signing up for college classes at my local community college, fashion merchandising. My best friend's dad approached me with a job opportunity to work as a manager at custom suit shop. On a whim, I said yes. Fast forward, 13 years later, as a millennial, I completely avoided student loans by not going to college. But I now own my own custom suiting brand and make significantly more than many of my peers who attended school. All of my friends who went to fashion school, my dream way back then, are working 9 to 5s in retail or adjacent fields. Honest and definitely hard work. I work a 30-hour month and am averaging about $14K, $16K in income before taxes. That decision really changed the entire trajectory of my life for the better. I've seen so much success and am eternally thankful to my best friend's dad for helping it happen. Story 22. Parents made me start saving at 50, made me save a portion of every paycheck directly after that. Didn't think it was a big deal until I got much older and realized almost all of my friends and family of similar age weren't saving until their 20s or later. Story 23. House got broken into and robbed while I napped on the couch. Had I woken up, I could have died. You never know, they might have had a gun. Anyway, was in a bad mood after that. Friends called and reminded me about a party, and they were about to swing by. And did I still want to go? I really did not, considering my mood, but then for some reason, changed my mind. At the party, I met a guy who was opening a bar. I was looking for work at the time. A few years later, I ended up buying that bar from him, which is where I eventually met my wife, when she came in for someone else's birthday party that she also initially did not want to attend. Story 24. I wore a nerdy t-shirt a college friend gave me to a film festival. There were some vendors there, and one recommended a comic series that I might like based on the joke on the shirt. That led me into a local comic shop, which led me to join a game night there, which led to me making friends, which led to the formation of my primary adult friend group. That wasn't a shirt, it was a bridge. Story 25. I ended up trauma dumping to a new online friend in January of 2020. My partner at the time had become entirely dependent on me for cooking, cleaning, and finances. Pretty much everything. This girl that barely knew me helped me to leave her, which I did right before the pandemic set in. By the end of the pandemic, we were dating, and now we've been married 2 years. As for my ex, last I heard she eventually got help and was diagnosed with a plethora of mental illness. She's getting disability and much happier with her new partners. Story 26. Taking up coding automation as a hobby on a whim. I was just tinkering with scripts to automate boring tasks at work, and it slowly turned into a new career path. Now it's the main skill that defines my professional life. Small curiosity, effort, life trajectory, change. Story 27. Taking a student job doing tech support for the university. Ended up liking it way more than what I was studying. Was basically doing it full-time by graduation. Carved out a 30-year ITSys admin systems engineer architect career out of it completely, in spite of not being a classically trained computer science grad. I wonder where I would have wound up if I was just driving the espresso machine at Starbucks or something else. Story 28. Story 29. At a language department fair in college, tables with professors for different languages, to encourage freshmen to pick one, I stopped to talk to the Russian professor just because he looked lonely, with everyone mostly interested in French and Spanish. I was already taking French, had zero plans to study Russian, but after a couple minutes conversation and looking at the intro course materials, I thought, what the hell? I'll take one semester for fun 20-odd years later. I'm a Russian translator. That one chance decision to stop and chat changed the course of my whole life. Story 30. I was casual friends with a guy both my roommates were friends with. I added him on MySpace. That led to us becoming Facebook friends when we switched over. 10 years later, I was posting about a string of bad first dates I'd been on, including one guy singing Memory from Cats to me. He sent me a message asking for my number, and I thought, what the hell, why not? We started dating. And another almost 10 years later, we celebrated our 6th wedding anniversary in May, and our daughter turns 6 in a couple weeks. Story 31. I don't even remember making the decision, but this is how the story goes. In the late 80s, when I was just shy of 5 years old, my parents took me to the movies for the first time. This was before Disney VHS, and the theater was showing Cinderella. Preschool-age me left the theater saying, "Call me Gus." I apparently just adored Gus, the dang mouse. My parents humored me, thinking it a phase. When I started school, I took the name with me. I'd get roll call Sandra, and I answered, "Call me Gus." Fast forward to me in college. Still going by Gus. Struggling with gender identity. We did not have all the great terms as I was growing up, so I was very lost and lonely. But I wanted to legally change my name. I finally settled on August, so Gus would finally become a logical nickname. I'm now a happily myself trans man named August. Have been loving my name for 18 years. Even better, a few years after the name change, I discovered August is a family name. I'm just the first one in 3 generations. But 4 generations ago, there were a ton in my family. So I renamed myself permanently at age 4. Nailed it too. Story 32. I was in a mild depressive slump in the fall of 2018. I was just shy of 25 years old, and my mom saw an ad for auditions for a local community play at a nearby church. I was in drama club in high school, and my mom said I should try out, so I thought, why the hell not? I got the part of the wife in a young married couple. One night, the guy who played my character's husband approached me in the parking lot after rehearsal and asked if I'd like to go to dinner. I was single, and he was pretty good looking and a good actor. Sure, why not? We went to dinner at a local tavern and had a great time. That was 7 years ago. We've lived together for 4 years now. This year on October 18th, we got married. Thanks, Mom, for keeping an eye out in the newspapers. Story 33. Freshman year, I broke up with my girlfriend, who I only saw at church once a week to pursue someone at school. Not only did that not work out, church girl was my first real love, and at 32 years old, not a day goes by that I do not think of them. I am haunted by my selfishness and at the thoughts of what could have been. Story 34. My friend asked one of his work colleagues for a date. She wanted him to bring a friend for her sister, and I accepted the blind date invitation. That was his only date with his colleague, but 35 days later, I proposed to her sister. That was 54 years ago, and we're still blissfully married today. Story 35. 1 week before our high school band trip, my friend who was supposed to be my seat buddy got a girlfriend and wanted to sit with her instead. I asked a classmate of mine if he'd like to sit with me. We were friends, but not particularly close. He had the same situation happen with his original seat buddy, so we sat together on a 22-hour drive twice. We're married now and have a 7-month-old baby. If it wasn't for multiple tiny decisions from us, it never would have happened. From him deciding to join a club on a whim, where we met, to my mom signing me up for band, where we grew closer, to me deciding to sit next to him on the first day of junior year, all the way up to me asking him if he still needs a bus buddy. It was meant to be, haha. For my husband, if we never got together, he would have likely never changed majors, transferred colleges, gotten his big internship, and thus gotten his job. Now, so agreeing to be my seat buddy got him a wife, a baby, and a career. Story 36. My first year out of college, my uncle was visiting me in the city I lived in. My friend's birthday party was Saturday night, and I had originally said I couldn't go because of my uncle's visit. He ended up being tired and wanted an early night, and although I had work the next day, decided to go to the party for a bit, ended up meeting my now husband there, and we're still together 14 years later. Story 37. Just out of high school and looking for my first job, I was hired to the first one I applied for, but it turned out they required employees to wear a tie. No thanks. Applied for a second job, no ties required. Got it. Became friends with my future brother-in-law. Married his sister and had kids with her. Still dislike wearing a tie. Story 38. At 13, I decided to try learning some 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons at the local library. This act led me to my adopted family that gave me a safe place when I got kicked out of my home later that year. Living with them led me to working at a close-by location where I met my partner of 6 years. I owe Dungeons & Dragons a lot in life, TBH. Story 39. In my freshman year of high school, I overheard the cute girl that sat next to me in class talk about swim practice. I realized she was on the swim team. After school, I stopped at the pool locker room to join the swim team, thinking I could socialize with the cute girl swimmers. Coach said, "Welcome to the team," and handed me a Speedo. I changed in the guys' locker room, and all the guys seemed pretty cool and welcoming. I went out for warm-ups and quickly realized after we started our warm-up laps that it was not a co-ed team. The girls' swim season had just ended, and the men's just starting. Oh boy, I almost left, but decided last second to stay and at least finish practice. The guys there were really cool and welcoming and said, "See you tomorrow," as I left. So the next day, I went back to practice. And again, in a roundabout way, I did end up socializing with the girls' swim team, since swimmers were a pretty tight-knit community and had a lot in common anyway. Every girl I dated in HS was a swimmer. I became a lifeguard and swim instructor as a summer job until I graduated. Right after graduation, a girl was hired as a lifeguard and we started dating. We dated for a few years on and off before I joined the military. While away, we talked on the phone daily and realized how much we loved each other. We decided to get married. That was 22 years ago. We're soulmates now and have 2 wonderful children. My entire high school career and every job I had up until I joined the military was related to swimming in some way. All because I overheard a girl talk about swim practice, and I made a last-minute, rash decision to attend a practice to get to know her, and stuck it out because the guys on the team were cool. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I never heard that comment or chickened out on staying on the team. Story 40. Listening to the radio instead of a CD one day as I was driving to work. I was working a terrible job and feeling really lost about what I should do next after I got kicked out of college. Academic failure related to untreated ADHD. I heard an ad on the radio for a 12-week intensive medical transcription training program at a nearby large healthcare organization. The program paid for your tuition and books and a full-time hourly wage while you attend school, and you were guaranteed a full-time job at the organization if you successfully completed the program. I thought to myself, I should apply for that. It would be way better than slicing pork chops with a bandsaw. So I did, and 26 years later, I'm still working there. It gave me excellent health insurance that allowed me to access mental health care, a position where I transcribed psychiatry and psychology reports, which stimulated my interest in the mental health field, tuition assistance, a flexible schedule that made it easier to go to school, the ability to reduce my hours to part-time so I can continue to have really stable employment and excellent health insurance while I'm getting established in my new career. And when I reach retirement age, I'll have an actual pension. Edit. Oh yeah, and the radio station was based in the same city as my employer, and I ended up dating one of the station's DJs after I moved there. Story 41. Opened my front door one day and there was a kitten meowing and trying to walk inside my Apton phone. Decided I would take it in and try to find it a home. Through a very long string of events, I'm now married with 3 kids, and one of my good friends is now my brother-in-law, and he's married with a kid as well. Story 42. I applied for a job as a forklift driver in automotive, just trying to make some money as a broke 19-year-old. Over the last 12 years, I've worked my way up to being a master scheduler and now working towards program management product launch. As much as it drains me some days, I love it. I went to college to be a music teacher. Didn't graduate, but that's what my intention was. Story 43. Forgot my glasses for a class in college. So I had to sit in the front row to see the board and chose a table next to the door. A classmate came in late and sat next to me. I asked her why she was late dressed so spiffy, and she said she just came from a job interview. Told me I should apply. I did. I got accepted, and I moved to NYC and got my master's and kicked off my career life. Thanks, myopia. Story 44. Freshman year of college, I didn't have many friends. Hell, I'd never really had any friends in my life to that point. One of the few acquaintances I had texted me at midnight on a Friday asking if I'd go to a house party with him. I was in my dorm, not doing anything. I wasn't really the kind of person to go out. I was pretty risk-averse, depressed, socially awkward, but I was like, what the hell? It's May, it's almost summer break. Maybe it won't hurt. At that party alone, I met my future husband and some of the best friends I've ever known. Some were in our wedding party. A lot of them made up the bulk of the guest list. Having a solid group for the first time in my life made me more outgoing, friendlier, more confident. No exaggeration, it saved my life. It pretty much eliminated the problems I had with tragic end ideation, gave me the confidence to break off from abusive family. I haven't felt that gnawing loneliness in years. The personal transformation has helped me continue to make new friends and better myself. This party was about 8.5 years ago, and as cliche as it is to say, I don't recognize the person I was before this. I love who I am now. I genuinely love life. And going from a teenager in an awful and lonely place to a much more confident adult all happened because I got a single text and said, fudge it. Thank God for all that. Story 45. Applying for a job I was 100. Sure, I wasn't qualified for. I only did it to practice my interviewing skills for a different, realistic job. I got the offer, panicked, took it, and it launched a career I didn't even know existed. 8 years later, I'm a director here. Story 46. Technically, whatever decisions I made that ended up with me meeting the person I'm currently dating, because he's a godsend, and since he lives in another country, it's kind of crazy how fitting we are for each other. He visits me in January, and I'm so hyped for it. Spent a month with him in October. And he spent a week with me in August. We want to visit the Netherlands in April. My stomach is getting butterflies just thinking about it. Story 47. It was Sunday, Sept 24, 2023. My wife with 34 weeks of pregnancy was having a little breathing issue, refusing to go to hospital, saying it's just a small issue. It will settle. We had a complete gynecologist checkup just on the evening of the last day and everything was fine. I convinced her to go, and that small decision changed everything. At the time we arrived at the hospital, doctors discovered through CTG that our son's heartbeat was in danger of severe bradycardia. They asked me to sign documents of emergency C-section and prepare your mind for anything. The wife having breathing issues and anesthesia could affect her in this case, and the baby is already stressed inside. Waiting outside OT, my mind was wandering in thoughts about what will happen. The doctor came and told me that we are done with operation. Your baby needs an immediate NICU, as he had 2 knots of umbilical cord around the neck. In NICU, he was immediately put on a ventilator, and for days we didn't know if he would survive. Surfactant doses for lungs, pentagloin injections, NGs, pulmonary hemorrhage, recurring pneumothorax, sepsis, multiple CPRs. Every moment felt like a battle. Doctors even told us his chance of survival was less than 1. Yet, he fought for his life. By blessing of God, he got recovered. After 28 days in the NICU, we finally brought him home. Today, he's a healthy, happy 2-year-old. All of this started with what seemed like a small, ordinary decision to go to the hospital for a small issue. That tiny choice completely changed our lives. If we hadn't gone to the hospital, we would have lost our child, and it would have been the greatest loss of our lives. Story 48. Literally happening right now. I was vending at LA Comic Con last year. We 3D print stuff to sell, and I made a life-size Shadow the Hedgehog. My cousin kept bugging that he wanted food, and we headed off to go look for food. When we were going back, he kept going to different aisles, and we happened to run into the voice actor who plays Shadow the Hedgehog. I told him about my statue and brought it over to him. Him and a few other Sonic voice actors were super impressed and mentioned that they had a mini reunion a few weeks later and if I would be willing to make more of the characters for them. I did and took them to the event. They all loved it, and we've kept in touch, and now I'm hosting my own Sonic convention, and technically it's going to be the biggest reunion in the world. Everyone with me are still super excited to see how it turns out. Story 49. I had a full-ride football scholarship as a transfer out of junior college. I had a liberal arts degree, the counselor at one of the best schools in the West for architecture, graphic design, and computer science. I was enamored with the stock market and trying to make money. God, I regret choosing finance. Story 50. I didn't want to go to high school, and I just wanted to do online schooling, but my parents didn't want me to do that, so they just told me to choose one high school I wanted to go to, and I picked one that had good music programs, and that's how I meet my now partner of 15 years. Story 51. I was 9 when my favorite cartoon, the serious Sonic cartoon, was canceled. I wanted more Sonic, so I dug out my mom's electric typewriter and wrote more Sonic myself. This was 1994, so no internet fan fiction. So it was just me entertaining myself. But 31 years of writing later, I'm querying literary agents trying to get published. Story 52. I declared my major and needed to be assigned an advisor. I asked for Professor Y, but Professor Y was on vacation, so they asked me if I'd be okay with Professor Z instead. I said that was fine. Well, Prof. Z had just gotten a big grant from Google to help them develop an app, but everyone on their team used Apple products. I showed up for my intro meeting with an Android and was offered an undergraduate research gig on the spot. Me and that professor did a lot of good research together, and the research kept working. And sooner or later, they looked at me and said, "Have you ever thought of making a career out of this?" So now I'm almost done with my PhD in mechanical engineering at MIT. It's mind-blowing. Not even something I thought I could never do, but something that never even occurred to me as an option. So what's the small decision? Well, my whole family also uses Apple products. I was the rebel who wanted an Android in high school because the Apple Store didn't have emulators yet, and I wanted to play Pokemon on my phone during musical rehearsals. Video games cause PhDs. Story 53. When I was 12, on an evening I was having raclette cheese for diner. My parents told me not to eat more of it as I already ate quite a lot and I'd get sick. I didn't listen to them and I ate way too much. Well, the next day I did get sick, but it continued forever. I got IBS. I haven't been able to get rid of it after all these years, and it's ruining my life every single day. Story 54. I got to know the summer intern at my company one year. Her dad was a senior executive in the company. I decided to ask her out at the end of the summer. We had an awesome time and continued to see each other. After a few weeks, she introduced me to her family, who were great. I had a lot of good chats with her dad, which inevitably steered to my career. He is a highly educated dude, and he put the bug in my ear that I should consider going back to school. I had an undergraduate degree in business, but he was suggesting MBA. I had thought about it before, but they are expensive. You have to stop working for 1-2 years, etc., etc. But being surrounded by these educated, successful, and encouraging people, I began to think I might be able to do it. The president of the company I worked for heard that I was considering getting an MBA. He would have had no idea who I was were it not for my girlfriend's father. He called a meeting with me and encouraged me to apply to the Ivy League school he went to. Seemed like a long shot idea, but my GMAT score, standardized test for MBA admission, was solid, so I did. I got in and received some partial scholarships, and 2 years later, I was an MBA guy working in investment banking. Not a flex, insane hours, and a tough culture. 3 years after that, I married that intern, the love of my life. Many years after that, I have a life that I would never have dreamed of had I not met my future wife and had her and her family encourage me to think bigger. I would probably be a middle manager somewhere and not an executive myself. My own children will have the opportunity to pursue whatever education they want, anywhere in the world. Whether it's a trade school, fine arts degree, engineering, med school, they'll be able to think bigger than I was after high school. Story 55. There's a long series where any of them being different would have completely changed my life. I think people underestimate how easy something can vastly impact things. When I was like 7 or 8, I went over to my brother's friend's house and agreed to play a game. It was magic. That led to me playing it with my brother a lot for about 2 years. Then, as a junior in high school, I saw some friends playing Magic, and I remembered it and joined in. I got into it a lot and starting playing at a local store and joining tournaments. Meet some cool people. When I was getting ready to move for college, one of the Magic players I met at the store had moved from the city I was going to and got me a job. At that job, I became friends with a homeless guy. He was cool and was homeless through no fault of his own. He had been on the street since he was 3 and never got a break. 9 months in, I ran into that homeless guy while grocery shopping, and we chatted it up for a bit. It was like 11 at night, and this guy was very friendly and over the top, so he gave me like 5 hugs. I had no problem with it. He was just a fun and somehow optimistic guy. While checking out, the checker apologized for him bothering me, saying he was around a lot but harmless. I explained that I knew him and was friends, And after that, I had several more conversations with that checker, and eventually she invited me to a BBQ. At that BBQ, I met basically the core of my soon-to-be Maine college friends, still among my closest friends. Through that group, I meet many more people, including my wife. I wouldn't have gone to law school where I did, or live where I do, or have kids, if I hadn't met my wife. Any of those decisions would have broken that chain. None of them at the time, aside from maybe the BBQ, stood out as remarkable moments that created a path for my life. Story 56. Asking this random girl at camp for her parents' phone number, we were kids, because we vibed really well, she was funny, and our creativity, undiagnosed ADHD, meshed really well. I wanted to be her friend, and we happened to also live pretty close together. That girl is now my girlfriend. Story 57. I was a divorced single mom without a college degree, working retail and barely making ends meet. I'd always been involved in the arts when I was younger, and at a party a guy I met told me that he was a graphic artist and that it wouldn't take a 4-year degree at that time to get into the field. I ended up going through a 40-hour-a-week, 6-month course for those with low income, and that jump started my career. I was a graphic designer for 30 years before retiring. One day, about 20-some years after that party, I ran into that man again and told him how that one conversation had changed my life. Story 58. In my first year of uni, I didn't really have a group or anything to belong to. My parents urged me to join a club, so I reluctantly found one that actually aligned with my interests pretty well. The day of the first meeting came and darn man, I was so tired and did not want to deal with people or do anything. But I went to make them happy. Holy shoot. I never believed in love at first sight, but I met this girl and immediately was completely enamored. I don't know what the fudge happened. I've never experienced anything close to it. I was in a conversation with a person I just met, and she walked in, and I genuinely lost the ability to speak. My brain just fully had a system reboot. Anyway, she turned out to be the love of my life, and I don't even want to imagine where I would be without her. Also, my parents will never let me live it down, but I'm too happy to care. Story 59. After a meeting one day, I decided I looked too cute to just go home after it. So I went to a midweek chill at a local bar that lots of my friends were going to. While they're doing some work for the meeting I just had, sipping a drink in walked a guy I was friendly with but hadn't seen in a while, and I don't know if the light was different that night, but he looked good. That was almost 14 years ago, and after 6 months of coy flirtation, we got together. It's been a rough decade and a half for me and my family, and he's been a rock throughout. Story 60. Decided to give a guy a chance in college when I wasn't looking for anything serious. He turned out to be the best thing that's ever happened to me, taught me so much about myself and vice versa, grew as people together, started chasing our dreams, moved to a place we love, learned to process trauma together. I'm marrying him in a couple days. Story 61. In college, I was in my apartment and wanted to take a nap, but remembered that I needed to submit a resume in person back then. I thought I would never get the job anyway, so almost decided to just nap and not bother with the trip to go submit my resume. But for some reason, I decided to just get up and drop it off. That resume led to my job, which led me to my husband, which led to my kids. I've tried to remember ever since to just push through small discomforts, because you may not know where they might lead. Story 62. I decided to confront a guy I remembered from college who swiped left or rejected me on Tinder when he showed up to my birthday party with his invited friend. I yelled, "Why didn't you swipe right on me on Tinder?" He very suavely said, "Do you have any idea how gorgeous you are?" And I was so tipsy and flattered I kissed him. Today we've been married 7 years, and I'm 8.5 months pregnant with our first child. Story 63. In January of 2019, I decided to wait for the idiot in front of me to flip a U-turn instead of going around him. A teenage girl coming up the hill behind me rear-ended my car and gave me a head injury that I am still battling today. It's been almost 6 years, and it has impacted every aspect of my life. I would go back and undo it in a heartbeat if I could. Story 64. I started working at this restaurant as a server, my first serving job ever. I was decent at it, but my coworkers didn't like me, including the people who trained me for the job. It was kind of hard being there every day, but I stuck it out because the money was good. It was more money than I had ever made. At the age of 21, I started working there as a way to get over a really bad breakup. The guy was a jerk, abusive, and also cheated on me with a minor. But for some reason, I still didn't want to end the relationship. He made the decision for me, and it sent me into a spiral. He was also a coworker, so I needed a new job quick. I'm glad I stuck it out and stayed at that restaurant, though, because 6 months later, a new guy started working there, and we became friends instantly. 2 months after that, we started dating. Now it's been 12 years. We've been married for 7 years and have 2 small kids. Story 65. At the time, I was going through a divorce and got a bug ticket for some code that I was working on. I decided to go to the software tester to get more info, instead of responding in the ticket. When I got to her cube, she turned around and gave me this gorgeous smile, and I was instantly smitten. We've been married for 16 tests. Story 66. I went to see the Doors movie on opening night in '91 with my housemates, and a high school acquaintance was sitting in the row behind me. Hadn't seen him since 1987 or so. He got there on skateboard. I drove him home. Yesterday was our 30-year anniversary. Story 67. When I was a college freshman, I was at the mall with my new friend. Let's call him Adam. He got himself an Orange Julius, but he took a few sips and decided he didn't want it. He asked me if I wanted it, and yes, I finished it off. 2 days later, Adam is hospitalized with a bad case of mono. A day after that, I'm hit with it. Stayed in bed in my dorm room for days with a 102 fever. I was so sick, and I swear having a fever like that for so long altered the state of my brain. I swear I was dumber from that point on. A year later, I was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus. Years after that, I was diagnosed with an underactive thyroid. Hashimoto specifically, which is the autoimmune-flavored hypothyroidism. My endocrinologist thinks the Epstein-Barr is just chilling in my thyroid, and my body will keep attacking it until it destroys my thyroid. Pills every day for the rest of my life, dosage always rising. All because I couldn't turn down a free slurp of mall drink. God darn it. Edit, a word. Story 68. Choosing a fixed-rate home mortgage instead of variable rate. I didn't lose my house like millions of Americans in the past couple decades because of the mortgage terms. Thanks to the low interest rate and refinancing twice as the rate continued to drop over the years, my mortgage payment is comparable to what a person in my area pays for a single rented room in an already occupied house. Story 69. In 2017, I left my family church. I was immediately cut off from the vast majority of my extended family, which at the time was essentially my entire circle of people I knew. My cousins were my best friends, but I left, so I got excommunicated, literally uninvited from family gatherings. Fast forward 8 years, and my wife and I live in a different state, have an amazing family of 4, and have an even larger circle of friends and chosen family, excuse the grossness of the term, than what we had before. My entire outlook on life, religion, politics, education, career, changed over the last 8 years, and I know it's from the unintentional relief I got from being kicked out of a family of truly awful people. There's times I regret not waiting to leave the church until it was time to move away, about 7 to 8 months later. But I'm glad because it gave me the opportunity to watch how the people I loved would behave when the status quo was disturbed. Story 70. Roommate asked if I wanted to go to Wendy's. On the way to get food, had to stop at a venue he was playing a show at that night. I got out and practiced a routine I had been working on with some roadies. One of them asked who I was and if I had a job. They hired me. Launched my career in digital media and production. I've had so many unique opportunities and worked with amazing people, all because I wanted a 4-value meal. Story 70, and perhaps not life-changing, but certainly impactful. Apologies beforehand for a slightly long post. I was watching a live broadcast of an esports event and didn't think the casters were doing a great job. Incidentally, I had an old friend who was part of the team producing the tournament. Jokingly sent him a text saying, "I think your casters aren't great." He retorted, I assumed in jest, with, "You think you could do better?" To which I responded, "Of course." Didn't hear anything back from him after that, so just assumed he was busy with work and life. Couple of weeks later, he sends me a text asking me to meet him. Location wad, some out-of-the-way industrial area, yet he told me to dress nice. I assumed we were meeting up after his latest production and going to have dinner at a nice place after bar, so I just went along with it. When I arrived, it was indeed at the set of an event broadcast. Met my friend and he told me to wait on a couch in the reception area for a bit. He came back in a couple minutes and just said, "You're on in half an hour." "On for what?" I asked, slightly confused. "To put your money where your mouth is," came the reply. That was how I casted my first esports competition. I did okay and was called back for more gigs. I don't do it full time, but I've been doing it on and off for over a decade now and got to travel to other countries to do it too. It has gotten me opportunities to not just cast bigger esports events, like being my country's FIFA World Cup local correspondent over the years, but also some actual sports commentary work, including both local and overseas tournaments. Also got to meet some people from the industry who I still consider friends till today, all because of a flippant comment I made, in the absolute blind faith of an old friend who bet on me doing a decent job sight unseen on an actual live broadcast. Story 72. In December 2021, and my dog died very unexpectedly. I always said when she went, I wouldn't get another dog. The grief was unbearable. I missed her so much. On Jan 11, I was working a local environmental field job in my town. I had a voice go off in my head, go to Bastrop Pound now. I didn't argue with the voice and quickly wrapped up the work. I drove 45 minutes to the pound right when they opened. I walked around the area where the dogs were being held, made my notes, and decided to explore rest of the property. I see a guy walking out of a large barn and I could hear dogs barking. I asked him if I could go in. He stammered, looked back into the barn and then at his watch and said, sure, but he'd have to accompany me. I walked down a log line of dogs in cages, and when I got to the end, I turned around. On my way back to the front of the barn, I saw this tiny little puppy poke her head out of the shadows. I stopped and asked if I could go into her cage and see her. The guy opened up the door and I got in. She didn't bark or back away. She let me look at teeth and touch her feet without pulling away or snarling. I patted the ground a little bit, and she responded by doing the same. I said he'll take her. Apparently the barn was the holding area for dogs that have just been surrendered, so I was the fist to see her. 3 days after that, I picked her up from the pound once her spaying was complete and posted on FB. A friend commented, OMG, that's Wonder Woman, her pound name. We went to pick her up 3 days ago and found out she was adopted only 30 minutes before we got there. I am so happy that I listened to that voice in my head, BC. Now I have another best friend. She's absolutely the best and most well-behaved dog. I love her so much. Story 73. My ex-BF convinced me we should both go back to uni. I was really reluctant at first. I'd recently gotten into a hobby that I was passionate about, but studying seemed super impractical. After all, we needed to pay rent. He finally convinced me that we could do it, and we could get financial aid to pay for our education and help us get by. It had to be better than the dead-end jobs we'd been working. That relationship ended up fizzling out, but I continued on at uni. About a year after we split up, I met an exchange student in my department, and we immediately hit it off. Fast forward 25 years, I now live on the other side of the world with the absolute love of my life. We both have PhDs, successful careers, and a wonderful family. It wasn't at all where I expected to end up, but I'm exactly where I want to be, all because my ex convinced me to take a chance and make a change. Story 74. I always get 9 in Arabic, and for the last year of school, I said I should get the best mark. So I tried hard like hell, and I prayed, and I said to myself, if others can, so I can too. Why others and not me? And in the final exam, I got 1520. Best mark in the whole class. Trust yourself and be confident to reach your goal. Story 75. During COVID, I lost my job as a project manager for love events. Obviously, everything shut down. I always planned to go back, but was looking for work during the pandemic. Friend worked at an LAE Fixel engineering lab. They were looking for bodies to do manual testing, basically sit on a chair and test devices for 8 hours, very simple. Paid well, and I could make my own hours, so decided why not? I can stop when the pandemic ends. Ended up fixing the machine one night when it broke, as I'm familiar and handy with electronics like that. They asked if I wanted a full-time job maintaining their equipment in the lab. 5 years later, I've moved up twice and am now taking night classes to get engineer training to become an engineer at that company. Story 76. My friend told me about a big scholarship we could both get at a university. I told my parents and they got excited. Then when I went to apply, I found out that the scholarship application deadline was earlier than the regular application deadline, and I had missed it by 1 day. In a panic to not disappoint my parents with yet another dumb, lazy blunder, I Googled my scholarship in other schools that would give the same amount, and a state school way far away came up first, so I picked it and told my parents, oh, this one is actually better, with no real intent of going there, just appeasing them that I got a scholarship. I visited the university and ended up getting a really good feeling, so I ended up going there. Now 10 of my closest friends are from there, and my life absolutely, without a doubt, is on a different path because of those people and how everything else panned out from location to career. I can't say for certain it's for the better, but I can say for certain I wouldn't be where I am in the life I currently really love without that mishap in the order of universities popping up on Google. Granted, 1 year ago, I disliked my life, so it's hard to tell what's what. Story 77. In 2011, a girl I was dating jokingly suggested I do the online application for a game show. I did the applications. That relationship did not last at all. But within a year, I had a pretty successful appearance on the show, where I also met the woman I'm now married to. I've said often that every good thing that's happened to me since 2012 happened because of that game show. Story 78. I walked into a random pub on a random afternoon when I was a student and asked for a job. Ended up getting the job, made my first group of friends there since arriving at that city. One of them saved my life when I was acutely ill. One of them inspired me to try out a volunteering thing, which directly led to my current career. Story 79. We went to brunch after my younger sister tried on wedding dresses. One of my sisters and I drove separate and got to the restaurant early and opted to sit outside as it was a nice day. When my other sisters and moms showed up, they wanted to sit inside and asked if we would move tables with a wait time, which we did. When we finally got seated, I thought our waiter was super cute and left him my number. He texted me the next day, and it's now been 6 months of us dating. Story 80. Typing in lordoftherings.co.uk into a browser after learning that .co.uk was a thing at all. I got very into the discussion forum on there and later joined the discussion forum on a friend's website. I wound up going to the same college as this friend, and he told me about the forums that were on the campus network, and I joined those too. There would be meetups for members, and I went to one and made new friends. At the second one, I met my now husband. Story 81. I bought a couple of lasers, the type you see at concerts, to play around with at home back in 2020 when the pandemic kicked off. Just wanted to occupy my time with something new. Fast forward 5 years, and I'm now getting ready to start a business programming lasers and renting equipment out. Story 82. Guy I had known fairly well in high school sent me a Facebook invite to a party on a Saturday night. I figured I've got nothing better to do. Might as well go. I ended up reconnecting with some other folks I had known in high school. Long story short, I'm laying in bed next to one of those folks who I ended up marrying 7 years ago, and our 3-year-old is asleep in the other room. I don't know if I would have reconnected with her if not for that random party. Story 83. Our close friend asked us to come up to the Bay Area for a warehouse party. He was VJing at the next weekend. We had gone to tons of these with him, and my partner had even